Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my girlfriend says that I'm being unreasonable by not wanting her to go out drinking with her ex. I've been with my girlfriend for just under 3 years. She's had 2 previous relationships that both ended when they cheated on her. Her first boyfriend she hasn't spoken to in 6 years, and the other one she hasn't spoken to in 4 years. Her first boyfriend recently messaged asking how she had been and just wanting to catch up. She told me about it and told me she was planning on replying. I told her I didn't see why she'd want to bother talking to him when he's not even in her life anymore, but just said that I can't stop her from talking to him. She told me a couple more times when he messaged, but I believe they have been messaging slightly more than that. She mentioned today that he suggested they meet up for a drink with a few other friends and catch up. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her going, and she asked why. I just told her it's disrespectful to be going out drinking with your ex. She said she just wants to catch up with him and the other friends, but I just repeated that I wasn't comfortable with her going. I said if she chooses to go, then that will be it with us, since I'm not going to just sit back while she's going out drinking with her ex-boyfriend. She said I was being controlling, but I just pointed out I was only telling her what I was comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. She said I shouldn't be telling her not to go and she'd be fine with her going. How would you handle this? I'm a girl who got cheated on, then had the ex reach back out years later. I think you should start by asking why she wants to catch up with her ex, and what does she hope to gain from that conversation? They haven't been in contact for 6 years, correct? At this point, what does she feel this man has to offer in her life? What purpose would he serve for her? Let's be real here. She probably felt heartbroken, rejected, and not enough when he cheated. Now he's reaching back out and he wants her. She's seeking validation from him that she's still good enough to have his attention. Or it's a weird, show him what he lost out on situation. Either way, this stems from her seeking some kind of weird validation from him. There's also probably a little bit of what if there. The problem is that most stable women who wouldn't cheat recognize these emotions in themselves and work through it, typically in therapy. I get the vibe that she never addressed the cheating in therapy and has always had insecurity from that event. So I would just say that an insecure person is the one who's going to cheat with an ex to make themselves feel better, especially the ex who didn't want them. I think you were very smart to set the boundary. If you go, I will leave. Like I said, you can try to talk to her to get to the bottom of these feelings, but be aware that it may just make her a little bit sneakier. He's reaching out because of curiosity, not to catch up. Y'all have been together for years, and I don't see a need why she would want to catch up with him. Would she like you meeting up with an old ex that's been messaging you? I think your feelings about it are valid, and she's not mature enough to realize that. Yes, honey, go out with this other man that you've hooked up with before, and that is a known cheater. I wholeheartedly endorse you dulling your senses with alcohol while with him, and I will stay home while you do this, because I trust you, and it would be controlling to think otherwise, especially after you got defensive and said, "You can't make me." I realize 3 years is a lot of time to be with someone, but imagine discovering her affair after 10 years of marriage after you've had kids and such. You need to have a sit-down, no BS conversation with her. This is making you uncomfortable and making you question continuing the relationship. I would leave if she protests whatsoever. I had a very similar experience with my ex when I was around your age. My ex insisted on seeing her ex again in a friend setting as they obviously shared some history. She never painted a particularly good picture of him, so I didn't have a lot of respect for the guy. She had been messaging him, and one day I snooped and found out they had been reminiscing about their relationship. She continuously gaslit me into saying it was nothing, and eventually I was kind of manipulated and persuaded into letting her go and visit him to give him a houseplant. In hindsight, I was young and hadn't had a chance to develop my emotional maturity, but I was being blatantly lied to repeatedly. She would claim she was going to do other things, but was so suspicious, and I believed she was seeing him. Eventually, things got too difficult, and she decided we should break up. I asked if it was because of him, and she absolutely assured me no. As soon as I rode my motorbike off to stay with my mother, she moved in with him, and it broke my heart to have been deceived like that. What I say to your situation is hold your ground. This could potentially be a terrible course of action. Though if this is something she is interested in now, perhaps this is the kind of behavior you can expect in the future. Facts aren't feelings, and feelings change. Best of luck. There's a big difference between going out drinking alone with an ex and going to meet up with some friends and an ex. The mature thing to do would have been for her to invite you along so this ex could see how happy she is with you. If this ex is part of her friend group, he's always going to be around. Grown-up people can usually manage these things by just behaving normally. OP. He's not part of her friend group. The friends she's talking about are people from years ago that my girlfriend isn't even in contact with anymore. Which is the whole purpose of a catch-up and makes this all seem more normal than meeting an ex. I don't keep in touch with any exes, but I have one or two that were part of a friendship group from 20 years ago. We aren't all in touch anymore as a whole group, but if there was a catch-up night, I would 100% go and have no problem seeing my ex. Nor would I expect my partner to, or would I have an issue if roles were reversed. I don't know. I think catching up with an ex is totally fine. Yes, it's something I'd hope to talk about so both my partner and I can share our feelings, why one of us is doing it, set ground rules, etc., and get on the same page about it. But if you dated someone, especially in your teens, I can completely understand wanting closure or just to reflect with a more mature vantage point. I think that's healthy, but I'd want to confirm with my partner that that's why they're doing it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Set your personal boundaries and stick to them. Don't worry too much about what society thinks of you, because in case you haven't noticed, most people in our society aren't doing too well themselves. That's something we all learn once you spend enough time on Reddit. My boyfriend bought his female friend a Tiffany necklace for her birthday. I feel weird about it. My boyfriend of 11 months has a best friend, a girl best friend. I've been totally fine with this from the beginning because she was here before me and they've been friends since college. Although I feel it's important to add that they've never had the chance to date because they were both in relationships when they met. She's also been single for the past 3 months. Her birthday is this Friday and my boyfriend wanted to get her something really special. I thought this was sweet of him until I realized what he had bought her. Now I feel like it's extremely inappropriate and at the risk of sounding like a jerk, I want him to take it back. He claims she's been wanting this specific necklace from Tiffany's forever, so he bought it for her. He refused to tell me how much he spent on it, but I found an identical one on their website and it cost $250. To put it mildly, my boyfriend's really excited to give it to her. I bet he is. He says it's also a thank you gift for helping him get through a couple crappy semesters at graduate school. She's extremely smart and was in the same program. Okay, fine, but a necklace? Why not gift card or something less romantic? She wants to have a friend date with him on Thursday as an early birthday celebration, so he's taking her out for lunch or dinner on Thursday, which means they're going to get drunk. I've never had a problem with this girl, but I don't like how close they are. She's always been nice to me, but I can't help but feel like they might have some underlying feelings for each other. How can I solve this? Perhaps I could suggest to him that we both get her something and then have him take back the necklace while we still have time. Any ideas? Update. I had a sit-down talk with my boyfriend this afternoon. He was very supportive and understanding, for the most part. I explained my feelings to him regarding the Tiffany heart necklace, and he immediately agreed to return it. He seemed really disappointed over it, but he said he understood where I was coming from. So what we were going to do was buy her something together as a couple. We had already come up with a list of ideas and planned to go shopping tomorrow, until the friend date. This is where things got ugly. I explained that I was uncomfortable with the situation because I said it felt like she had feelings for him, which he disagreed with. I asked him if it was okay if I came along, and he said, "Probably, but I should tell her first." So I told him to text her and ask if it was okay, which he did right in front of me. Immediately, she replied, "I guess, sad face." As we were sitting there talking, she sent a second text that said, "Why can't it just be you and me?" He replied and said he wanted me to come with them, which seemed to upset her because the next thing she sends is, "Weird. So if I invite you to the blank concert next month, it better be just you and me. I already bought you a ticket." He responds and says he can't promise anything. Next thing you know, she texts, "Great. So in other words, your girlfriend's being a jerk and not letting you see me alone. I have to go to work. We'll talk tonight." What the heck? This just proves she's a snake. I told my boyfriend I wasn't going to put up with it and that he needs to start making some hard decisions. Immediately, he agreed and said he'd fix things. He said he'd end the friendship if he had to in order to keep me. So I guess they're going to meet up and talk tomorrow. Oh, and forget her birthday. Final update. It turns out he's not as innocent as I had previously thought, and now I look like the fool here. Last night, I stayed at his place and we talked some more. He said he was going to return the necklace first thing this morning. Well, he lied. I went over to his place on my lunch hour, and the darn thing was still laying on his nightstand. He claims he forgot to take it back and will have to do it later. In my gut, I felt like he was stalling me, and I was right. As I mentioned in my prior post, my boyfriend and his best friend were going to have a talk today. I honestly believed he was going to distance himself from her and explain to her that her actions were not appropriate. Well, that didn't happen. After 2 hours without hearing anything from him, I texted him to find out what was going on because I wanted to see him tonight after their talk. He responded and said he just wanted to have a night to himself. Right away, alarm bells are going off in my head because he's sending me short texts and is barely answering any of my questions. I told him his evasive behavior was really beginning to worry me, and he replied, "I'm sorry, I'm just confused." I texted back, "What do you mean you're confused? Confused about what?" He took forever to respond, but eventually admitted he was confused about our relationship. Instead of fighting over text, I went over to his place to figure out what the problem was. After lots of arguing, he finally gave me the truth. Apparently, during their talk this afternoon, she told him she's had feelings for him since college, and it's gotten to the point now where it's hard for her to be around him. I asked him if the feelings were mutual, and he replied, "I don't know." In other words, yes. I asked what else was said during this talk, and he said she basically feels bad because she feels like she's ruining our relationship and getting between us. Well, no duh. That's when he brought up the idea of us possibly going on a break so he can sort out their friendship. I told him I would never agree to something like that because it just gives him a license to hook up with her, which brought up my next point. I asked if he ever cheated on me with her, and suddenly he became very defensive. He said they only fooled around back when he was single. Funny how he never mentioned that before. I told him I didn't believe him because of how defensive he was. He then admitted that she had kissed him during their talk, but he pulled away after a couple of seconds because he felt bad. "But that's all that happened." Yeah, I'm not stupid. Even if it was just a kiss, he should have made it clear to her that he wasn't interested. Now this, "I don't know if I have feelings for her," BS. At that point, I told him we were done. Our relationship is over. I don't want to be in a relationship with someone I can't trust. He didn't even fight for me. All he did was apologize and say that he didn't mean to hurt me. Whatever, it's all BS. All the signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. The flowers, the watch, the heart necklace, the way she acted around him, etc. All the signs were there. I'm really trying to look on the bright side. I know I deserve better. I already feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. My relationship wasn't going anywhere, especially with her in the picture, and I should have ended it earlier. I'm extremely grateful that this happened now and not a couple years down the road when we were engaged or something. I have plenty of great friends and family to lean on for support, so everything will be fine. I'm moving on for good. Thank you to everyone who's helped me over the past couple of days. It's really been therapeutic writing all of this out. Am I the jerk for telling mother-in-law I was mad she brought food I can't eat and giving it away? I, 27 female, had my first baby 6 days ago. The birth went well, but I'm still recovering and in quite a bit of pain, and I've been very sensitive emotionally since giving birth. My husband, who's 27, and I told our families that we'd likely have no visitors for the first 1 to 2 weeks, just to set expectations. But privately, the two of us decided that we would play it by ear and see how we felt. Our second day home with our baby was really rough on me, and all I wanted was my mom to comfort and help me. So husband and I decided to call my mom and have her come over. She was such a major help, both emotionally and with the baby. So we had her come by every other day since. She went above and beyond to help us. Also, my bestie and her husband live down the street and have been dropping off meals and treats and walking our dog for us. But I don't consider that visiting as much as favors and errands. Mother-in-law found out about my mom's visits and she was very upset. So we decided to have her over for a brief visit, day 6 postpartum. She said they'd bring food and arrived around dinner time. I have celiac disease, so I cannot eat gluten. Mother-in-law brought homemade lasagna, pasta salad, muffins, and 2 types of cookies, all full gluten, and explained to me that she was sorry, but she had limited notice and only had time to make my husband's favorites. I immediately started crying, and my husband thanked his mom, but took me to the other room and told me he'd take care of it and ordered us delivery on the spot. I composed myself, introduced mother-in-law and father-in-law to baby, and then mother-in-law made another comment about how she wished she could have brought food for me, but it was just so time-consuming and burdensome to make things gluten-free. I snapped and told her she was rude, and I told her I was angry. Towards the end of the visit, my BFF's husband knocked on the door to come walk our dog, and to my surprise, brought us a homemade gluten-free tiramisu. I started crying again and thanked him profusely, and he told me it was no problem and surprisingly easy to make. Mother-in-law was upset because she realized that they'd been coming by and started complaining about how wrong this all was because she had to wait 6 days to see the baby and was faced with my anger. My husband took my baby from her and father-in-law snapped at her to drop it. They stayed and chatted for a short while, and when Bestie's husband came back to drop our dog off, I sent him home with one of the batches of cookies mother-in-law brought, which upset her. Mother-in-law has been texting and calling and trying to rally people against me ever since. My husband has my back and even went the next day to drop off almost all of the rest of the gluten food to our friends, and he told me to block mother-in-law's number if she keeps harassing me. I don't really feel like I was the jerk, but I'm also extremely emotional and sensitive to everything right now, and I'm not sure if I'm reacting to things reasonably at this time. Most of my in-laws are mad at me. Am I the jerk? I really don't get your mother-in-law. First of all, you decide who you want to see and when you want to see them. You don't need to keep it secret, and you don't need to apologize to anyone for it, especially at this point in time. What does your mother-in-law hope to accomplish with her actions? First of all, cooking gluten-free isn't hard at all. Just don't use wheat, rye, barley, and other grains, and don't put sauces or other stuff that contains gluten in the food. Boom, gluten-free. For me, we have multiple things here. 1. She forced her visit on you. 2. She cooked food just for her son and made sure you couldn't eat it. 3. She had to make a couple of stupid remarks in your direction. And 4. She tried to rally people against you. I say forget her. I would go completely no contact. Don't open the door if she visits you unannounced and block her on everything. Remember, she has no right to see your kid, but you have every right to remove her from your life. I'm glad your husband had your back. I'm sure I'll be downvoted, but whatever. I can't believe how many posts I see of women giving birth and saying they don't want to see anyone for a long amount of time after the birth, but their mom is okay, the exception. But certainly not mother-in-law. Even though she is the father's parent, she's completely unworthy of visiting her new grandchild until the mom gives permission. I guess dad had no part in making the baby, so he has no say in who visits the baby. Now I get women are mostly close to their own mothers, but assuming that mother-in-law isn't truly evil and raised a human that you chose to be with, why can't mother-in-law be allowed over when the other mom is? I just don't get it, and it's natural to be hurt when excluded from meeting your grandchild, especially when other random people were allowed over. OP's best friend and her hubby. Phrase it any way you like, but they were helping me, but clearly OP only wanted her preferred visitors to come by. Then mother-in-law brings her son's favorite foods when she's finally allowed to visit, which sadly OP can't eat, and mother-in-law is now the spawn of Satan for not catering to OP's dietary restrictions. I mean, if she wasn't good enough to come over to see the baby until she practically had to beg, why should she go out of her way for the woman who made it clear she doesn't even want her there? And is it really that bad to make things she knows her son likes and maybe doesn't eat often, because I'm sure OP isn't making them for him? Because some people require more emotional labor than you have capacity for. After birth, you are fragile, and it's hard to entertain people you aren't already comfortable with. It's not OP's responsibility to placate mother-in-law's feelings right after birth, especially not for someone so spiteful. You both are jerks. You seem to be a handful, a drama queen who now uses the excuse baby to allow yourself to act like a whiny kid or a very unstable person, and your mother-in-law is somewhat inconsiderate. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend her expectations are unrealistic and that I won't sacrifice my house to move in with her? My girlfriend and I have dated for around 3 years. We've lived separately this whole time, but obviously see each other often. In a few months, her lease at her current house, 1,800 square feet, is going to be up, and we're discussing moving together. She has 9 cats and a dog and a daughter. I have a dog. I own my house. I bought it 3.5 years ago before I met her, so it's about 400 square feet less than her place. She wants me to move into her house she's renting when I have a perfectly good home to live in. I understand her concerns about space and the comfort of the animals, but 1,300 square feet isn't that small, and I feel like it would be a horrible financial decision to give up on my 2.8 interest rate and start renting again, especially because my home value will probably continue to increase. On top of that, her rent is more than my mortgage. She's adamantly against living in my house though, and is acting like I'm a jerk for trying to explain it's a bad decision financially to do this. I haven't been trying to be abrasive or rude or talk down on her or her desires, but she seems to think if I don't move into her rented house, I'm not making sacrifices for her. Am I the jerk? Her main concern is that there won't be enough room for her animals to be comfortable. My argument is that, financially speaking, space is expensive. We need to make it work and figure it out because it's not in our budget to own a house bigger, and renting isn't financially responsible when I own. Part of my issue is that she's currently struggling paying for the space she has now. She currently shares the house she has with a roommate who would leave if I moved in, and their dog, but is seriously considering a second job to afford it. 9 cats? This woman doesn't rent a house, she runs a zoo. Your girlfriend needs an education in compromise. Compromise, it turns out, does not mean she gets whatever she wants and her opinion is right. You're a jerk if you disagree. Absolutely do not sell your house, regardless of whatever else you do. I can't imagine wanting to live in an 1,800 square foot house with 2 adults, 2 dogs, a kid, and 9 cats. Even more so, I can't imagine wanting to allow my significant other to bring that type of scenario into my home either. The zoo would be a deal breaker for me in general, as would her behavior in not understanding how good your position is and why it would be a very stupid decision for you to sacrifice that position. Not the jerk. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that your girlfriend is probably either not being forthright or possibly doesn't even know that she is unwilling to contribute to your house. She could resent that you have a house and she doesn't, and she could simply not want to contribute to a house and property that she has no ownership in. Which, were it the case, would be hilarious because what do you think renting is? Either way, this is a huge red flag. Bruh, some of the partners that these people in these stories settle for, just like, is that really the best you can find? Oh, well, it's hard for a lot of folks these days, Karen. A lot of them just kind of, take whatever they can get. Yeah, why do you think I'm with you? Am I wrong for being upset that I caught my partner saying he's single? I, 29 female, have been with my partner, John, 29 male, for 4 years, engaged for 1. We have our usual ups and downs, however, recently it's felt more down than up. I was trying to get us booked for a getaway for our combined 30th this year, however, my app wasn't working on my phone. I asked to use his, which he seemed somewhat guarded over. However, he agreed and handed me his phone. I sent the website via WhatsApp to him so I could access it faster, and when I clicked on WhatsApp, it took me straight to a conversation between him and another woman whom he hadn't even saved as her name. She was named Pizza. In this conversation, she asked if he was single, and he said yes. She then went on to talk about herself being single, and he stated, "Being single has its perks." He then asked her to send him a picture of herself as he wanted to know what she looked like. She did so, and he called her attractive. Now, I admit, I freaked out. He says he only said it as she has had bad mental health and was depressed, and he didn't want to upset her by boasting he was in a relationship. I was so mad. I texted her on this phone saying he's engaged and sorry he lied to her like that. I admit, I shouldn't have done that. He doesn't see any fault in what he's done. He says it's a non-issue and it doesn't matter. He then turned everything on me and said how bad of a partner I am and that now he doesn't even know if he wants to be with me. I don't know what to do. I feel so confused and upset, and I don't know if I have messed up somehow. I try to be a good partner. I'm not perfect by any mean, but I am in therapy and I do my best each day. I could be better, but no one can be perfect straight away. Update. I admit, at first I didn't want to listen to any of you. I regretted putting it on the internet and that people were just being horrible and they didn't know us. However, the more messages I got, the more of the pink paint chipped off the rose-colored glasses. I decided to ask him if he wanted couples therapy, and he told me, "No, there's nothing to fix, especially when I don't know about being with you." I then asked about pizza. This annoyed him, and he stated, "See, this is why I don't feel close to you, and if you don't like the apology I gave, then that's not my problem." His apology was him muttering he was sorry while scrolling on the PS5. That was all I needed, so we're over. I'm currently at my mom's and about to go on a besties weekend getaway. He's sorting himself to go back to his parents, and I'll have the flat. I cannot lie that I'm not heartbroken because I absolutely am. I believed he was my one, my future. I've cried a lot and feel a pain in my chest like no other. I'll be alone in a city I'm not from as we moved for his job. I know, though, that I will get through this. Thank you to everyone who helped me see our relationship clearly. Ex-best friend refused to pay back loan so I'm making them pay the IRS. Right before lockdown hit, I had left a bad relationship for good and moved back to my state to stay with one of my longtime BFFs to get back on my feet. This was someone who was like a sibling to me for 15 years. We went through the highs and deep lows in life by each other's side. Once everything was shut down, all my work, freelance and side hustles, dried up. It wasn't until summer that freelancers were included in all of the lockdown relief, and I was eligible for unemployment. The same time, my BFF was transferred to another state, but only for 1 year and then back. They weren't eligible for unemployment because they were still working remotely on reduced pay and hours, but they claimed they didn't have enough money for the move, and their relocation package was only $500 to break a lease and move to a neighboring state in 30 days during lockdown. Since I was planning to go with them, I lent what money I had to help them with the cost of the move. Once we got to the new state, friend needed a car to get back and forth from work instead of ride sharing, so I lent them more money to lease a car. I started working underneath them because their company was short-staffed for the holidays and I needed income. This is important because ex-best friend knew exactly what I made, a little over $11 an hour. Around this time, I brought up the loan and they agreed to start paying it back in chunks. By the end of the year, they had only paid back about $400 and told me they were getting a nice end-of-year bonus for how well the store performed and would be able to pay me back in full after the new year. We agreed March was the deadline. By February, I was asking if they had gotten said bonus. "Oh, I haven't gotten it yet. I'll let you know." Meanwhile, they had been dating someone really toxic and they were never around and started being distant via text with me and other mutuals. March arrives. Ex-best friend informs me they'll be transferred back to their old store and we can move back to where we came from. Yay! And, "Oh, I'll have to pay you back later because I had to pay off a bunch of credit debt," which was from a toxic ex they had dated before the current one. "Okay, fine. Let's get out of one of the worst states in the country, then we'll be able to settle up." Later that month, a mutual friend was hanging out and ex-best friend told them about the move back, except they said, "I'm moving back," before quickly correcting to, "We're moving back." April arrives. Ex-best friend had to travel to old store for a week to get things settled. I catch them when they're back and ask about the plans. In rapid succession, they reveal that they've completely done me over. "I found a one-bedroom condo. I'm not taking any of the furniture. You can find a nice place for maybe $1,000 a month. Oh, I'm ending the lease here 2 months early. You have to be out by June. You can keep working at the store here if you want." Long story short, I spent about a year couch surfing with friends in 4 different states. I was battling a deep depression over the horrible relationship I had left, the friendship I had been booted out of, the crap of another close friend, and the general crap show of life after lockdown. It was a terrible time, and I felt incredibly stupid that I let myself become homeless by trusting the wrong people in my life. After several attempts and writing to ex-BFF for repayment, I considered small claims, wrote up a demand letter, and organized all the paperwork. All their social accounts immediately went private. After a month of no response, I considered the time and money it would require to recoup my losses, neither of which I had much of. So I decided this doesn't have to be my problem anymore. They've been sent a 1099-C for cancellation of debt. They don't want to pay me? Fine. They can pay the IRS since they kept my loan as income. I have all the receipts I need to prove the loan and repayment terms, and they know that too. Am I the jerk for telling my son he has to go to university, get a job, or get out? My wife and I have 3 kids. They're 17, 15, and 10. My oldest has no intention to do anything after high school, at least none that he's made clear to us. So I gave him the same ultimatum my parents gave me. Either go to university, get a job, or get out. I chose to travel the world for 2 years. I had a lot of sailing experience, and my father had a lot of friends in that community, so I was able to sail around the world earning money and working my butt off. It wasn't a 2-year vacation. My family is well off, and I could have chosen an indolent life, but I knew I would be a disappointment if I chose that. So when I got back, I enrolled in university and eventually went to work for the family business. My wife thinks that I'm being unfair to our poor baby boy by throwing him out into the world. I'm not. We have the money to pay for his university. We have the money for all 3 kids. My middle child will probably end up with a good chunk of it in her pocket. She's on track for an academic as well as a golf scholarship. The 10-year-old is 10, and who knows what he's going to do, but he knows the plan. We have not been secretive about this rule. My wife and I agreed that we would raise productive members of society before we got engaged. Her and my son think I'm being cruel to expect him to fend for himself at 18. I've offered him multiple opportunities to do other things. He has no interest in anything beyond his computer. I'm at a loss. I don't think I'm wrong for expecting an adult to be an adult. My parents have already told him that they will not be giving him any money if he isn't in school or working. My wife is threatening to use her salary to support him. I don't have any say in that. I won't actually kick him out of the house, but I will stop paying his bills and cut off our grocery budget by 20%. If she wants to work so he doesn't have to, then there's nothing I can do about that. It's not fending for oneself when the parent tells the kids, "Go to university, we pay for it. You stay under our roof or work. Keep your money to yourself. You stay under our roof or choose to do nothing with your life and you'll have to fend for yourself." Not at all. You don't even give him ultimatums about what to study or what job to take. He could bum around from major to major or from minimum wage job to another while figuring out what he wants to do with his life, with all expenses paid. He's not going to get sudden inspiration on how to spend his adult life by staying home and doing nothing. Not the jerk for actually parenting your kid. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.